So my microphone wasn't turned on. I'm really sorry to say. Thanks, Jill, for letting me know that. Now I'm going to shut off my my phone so that I don't have to. Anyway, today is Thursday, which means it's Painting with Shawna on Thursdays. We're working on this pine grosbeak. The auction for my Frosty Raven ended on what day did it end? It ended on Sunday, and it's winging its way to its new roosting spot as we speak. And as soon as the person receives it, they will be. I'm sure. I can't wait to hear what they have to say about the painting when they see it in person. I also had a painting sell today. My Stillness, the owl that I showed last week, it sold today, so it's off to a new perch in Yellowknife, so that was exciting. Thank you very much. All that, you know, when people buy my work or collect any artist's work, you really are supporting artists in this sort of wild ride that we do. We work very hard to produce interesting work, and thank you for your ongoing support by having your eyes and watching this, and all the other things that you do, you know, subscribing to my YouTube channel and liking this video. You know, all of those things help me with YouTube, and it helps me just feel like somebody's listening. Anyway, let's get going. You can see it's a much lower this week because I'm now sitting. There's detail work to be done, and I find it easier to sit down and do that detail work. So let's get going. So as I was saying before, my sister let me know that my sound wasn't on. Thank you, Jill, again. Today my focus will be working more on this branch. You can see that I've been working on the other branches. They're not finished, but they're getting closer. I've got a good sense of the wings and the shapes of the different the parts of the wings. And we'll just sort of be moving around. There's lots of work still to do, probably beyond this live stream. There is probably another hour's worth of work to do. So let's get moving. I spritz my paint. I've got it upside down. That's not going to help. Okay, there we go. Okay, sitting forward so I can reach everything comfortably. So I spent a couple of hours today just building form and working on here. I've worked probably 4 or 5 hours beyond the last live stream on this painting. So it's taking its sweet time to come together, that's for sure. I think what I'm going to do is start with here. Let's start with here. We'll just build up this branch. We're thinking about where the light is falling on this branch. And I'm using my brush here, the Simply Simmons brush, to just move the paint around so that it's not just clumps of paint. There's this very subtle value shifts here, and just by putting some paint there and moving it around, I get to see how it starts to build form. So you can build form with value. That's generally the biggest thing that we're working when we're building form. You can build it with color, but I think value, add colors and so forth, make things so much easier. Okay. Just, oops, get my sound off here. Just checking the video out because I'm putting it on my phone. There we go. I'm done. Okay. Sorry for the distraction. Forgot to do that first. Okay. I'm just building up here. Now I'm seeing that there's all sorts of interesting shapes in the branches on the bark. So I want to take some time and get them in place. Again, you know, just working away slowly, and we can get to where we want it to get to by just being consistent and working. Just getting some. There we go. Now we got some of my paint has started to dry. Okay, so we're going to bring that. Dry my brush, move that around, soften. I don't want it quite that dark. I had way too much water on it. So when I'm looking at this area here, because this is the area that I'm working in, I'm going to put that down. I'm just moving my eyes back and forth, and I'm checking to see where I'm seeing those shapes and what their shapes are. It's a very slow process at this point. I mean, the whole thing's been, I'm not terribly fast anyway, but at this point it is even more painstakingly focused. But I like that, and it makes me happy to do it. So get some of that interesting low, sort of more chromatic orange color, not quite as low as what I've been working with, just to add some interesting shapes in here. So when I'm done, I will come and correct. I can see that I've sort of missed some here. I'll come with the other values that I was working with in behind and just reshape that branch so that it fits properly and looks proper. But I'll do that right at the end. I'm not going to do that now. I just did it just to show you what I was doing next. So I'm shifting the value a little bit by little bit, and I'm thinking about what I'm seeing. Then I'm going to bring my brush in, make sure that it's dry, and just touch the edge to soften those shapes a little bit. Sometimes I'm taking too much paint off. There, that's better. Building it up here and just thinking about what I'm seeing. Okay, got this shape. Now I'll come back and do a couple of another pass on this. Right now I'm just getting that information in and fussing about it. You know, like you just kind of fuss about building and making it look realistic. But you also remember that other than you guys seeing the image right here, right now, when people see your final painting, they won't actually see what you don't get right. They'll see what you do get right. And the things that you notice and think, oh, that didn't go well, they won't even notice for the most part, unless it's very obvious. But yeah, so it's just taking the time to build up and create this. I'm going to bring this in here. Oh, no, darker. Needs to be darker. Bring this shape back up. I'm just going to build it so that it looks like it is actually fitting into where I want it to be. So I'm just going to soften those edges, dry my brush in between, soften and straighten that edge. So when I was working this afternoon, I really had to pay really close attention to these shapes. So I basically put my hand up here and I go back and forth so that my eyes can go back and forth. I think that's not quite here. Let's see if we can create that sort of highlight area here where the light is striking the soft light, because it was a gray day, so it's not a, you're not going to have bright light. And you can see I'm working with a very little brush and I'm putting very little paint on because I can move it around and I don't want too much paint. And I don't want to leave it till it dries. I just want to come in and touch, touch, touch. So this one will be for auction. It will go out on Thursday this week coming. I think it's Thursday. So after the, it'll be before the live stream next week. It will be out and ready to be on eBay, and it will be looking for a new forever home. Around here, and then I'm going to bring in, just soften that edge, and I'm going to bring another value up, and we're just gonna, so if you get too much paint, you can just pounce it back with your dry, clean brush, and you can get the shape that you're looking for. And what I'm seeing is it's turning towards me, and it seems to be turning away from the light so that it's, I want to see if I can capture that feeling of turning towards me. And then I can see that it goes all the way up here, and I'm just going to take that and put that in place. Too much paint and you end up with blobs and it's not good. So it's just a matter of really understanding how little paint you need to have it blend together and do that. Okay, well, I think I'll leave that there. It needs more work. It definitely needs more work. I'm seeing where it needs more highlight. Let's get the lightest value that I have. Just put little traces amounts along the edge of the branch, and then bringing in that brush and moving the paint around. I spent a lot of time doing that at this point, just tiny bits of paint, moving it gently around to where I want it to be. It takes a certain level of patience to do this kind of painting, and not everybody has it. And the joyful part about painting is that just because I paint something the way I do doesn't mean you have to. And I love the fact that I watch all kinds of artists do amazing work, really different from mine. It doesn't have to be the same as mine for me to appreciate what they do. I have friends who do still life work that is just crazy amazing. Crazy amazing. And other friends who do work on either watercolor or oil. It's just fabulous what we can do as options. Okay, I'm going to leave that to dry now, and I think what I'm going to do is come in and work on the wing. Again, I don't want to go, I just want to be slowly moving up the value so that I don't end up with too much paint. I'm going to pull a little bit of paint off so that I only have the smallest amount of paint on my brush. And I can see, what I do see is there's some red in there, which I will bring later. I will put some of that red in. I find it really interesting. There's red here, there's red in here, there's red in here. So it's interesting how the red is moving around the space. So I'm working in value 8, a little bit of value 9 mixed in to get this shape that I'm looking for here. If you get too much paint, because I forgot to touch it, just carefully remove it. I've got a sheet here for me to touch so that I can pull off the blob of paint, because I'm working with such small amounts of paint now. Okay. And it takes I find my mouth is opened as I'm concentrating. Okay. So I'm going to come around here. And I'm going to touch this. So on Fridays at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, I have been putting out videos. I've got 4 out. Number 5 comes out on tomorrow. And they have blog posts and they have handouts because they're from my Acrylic 1 class. That I can't teach because of COVID. So I thought, well, I'll put that out. It's a very beginner class. So if you've been painting for a while, I don't think you're going to find it that interesting. But if you've been wanting to paint, it has some really basic information right now that seems like maybe it's not that important, but turns out to be strangely important. When you're very first starting to paint. Okay. Okay, move that right out of the way. Here I am. I'm here, and I'm seeing that's where the highlight is. And that's where the highlight is. And I'm seeing the edge highlight here. That goes all the way along. Clean my brush, get a new little bit of paint. Oh, paint there. I'm going to have to get a... If you end up with a brush that is, you're losing some of its bristles are strange, you can cut them off. Okay, so that's, I'm going to bring another little brush in because this is a lot of paint in a little area. And so this little brush I can use to soften the edge of this because I don't want it to be a hard edge, because it's not a hard edge on, there we go. So now I'm working with 2 small brushes to get this little area done. The wings fold in a very particular manner on birds. And I've never really thought about how they fold. I mean, I have pictures and I'm working with it, but it's my plan is to do more research and figure out how, you know, the feathers, what they are, because I know that there's different names for the different feathers. I thought I had a line on a book, but I am not able to find it, so I have to look for another book that will help me know that I'm working on secondary feathers and primary feathers and so forth. A little bit more paint. Take a little bit off the tip of my paintbrush. Looking here so I can see where I'm seeing that. Okay. Take the little brush, dampen it, move the paint around. We're just working nice and slowly, meticulously, and in the end you will end up with a painting that, or I will end up with a painting that gives me all the information I need and I'm pleased with. Okay, so just softening this edge. And then coming here, and this one comes way up here and then spreads out below, around it there. Okay. So you're starting to see how the feathers are laying down. Now, this is not the final pass of this area. I will work on this again to slowly build up to where I want it to be. It's easier to build up slowly and be patient than it is to kind of force things along too quickly, and then you're fighting with what you're seeing and what you're. So nice and slow, just coming up here. Oh, turn my brush a little bit. Get the other brush. So this brush that I'm working with is the Sceptra Gold 00, 00. You can get a 10-0, you can get pretty small brushes. I don't tend to work that minute. Okay. I'm happy with that. What I'm noticing over here is there's some red on here. It's not a lot of red, so I'm going to take this little brush and I'm just going to move it around a little bit and spread it out onto this and touch it with my fingers just to get that hint of that pinky red that I'm seeing here. Oh, and I probably got too much paint in there, but let's see what we can do for moving it around. It's all of these subtle, subtle shifts of value, of color, of, okay, let's get that shape done correctly. That makes the bird look more real, makes the bird look more realistic. Stop talking into my, I'm talking into my paint as I'm concentrating. Okay. Okay, so I see that there's a shape here that comes this way. And nice and slow. Careful, careful, careful. And in the end, you'll get to where you're really happy with this. We are just about halfway through our session today. That's amazing how quickly time goes. And then there's a little bit down here. And I'll dry my brush off really well and move that paint around. We've had another frosty week, which has been fine. It's February. It's Yellowknife. The ravens have been enjoying the fat bombs that I feed them every couple of days. And they eat, so it's fun to have them hanging around. Okay. Yeah, here we go. Okay, we're starting to see that. Those shapes come to life here. I'm going to put a little bit of that light just on the edge of these two little feather areas. And then I'm going to bring in some of that red, but I want a very little bit of that red. I don't want too much of that red. I can just see that there's a hint of it there. So we just want to put a little bit on and then move it around with the other brush. If it's a little damp, you can move that paint around quite well. And there. Oh, I think that's good. That's good. I'm going to come back to these. I'm building up the form and the shape nice and slowly. Move that paint around. Okay. Take some of it away when you get too much. So if you're on Facebook, I haven't done it on Instagram yet. Today I put out for the next vote of, and I'll put a link in below here for the next painting that I'm going to work on. I want to play with doing a bird and then putting a pattern using gold leaf, not real gold leaf, imitation gold leaf, in behind, and just sort of goof around with that. And I thought this would be a perfect time to do that, is when I'm working on small paintings for my live stream. So I chose colorful birds that I photographed here in Yellowknife. I need a brush. Okay. So I photographed I just got scissors and clipped the extra hair that seems to be falling off. Bring my chair back. So I've got 3 options for people to go and look and, oh, way too much paint. To choose. So if you're on Facebook, the link is there. If you're on my newsletter, I will be sending a newsletter out with the link. It's the deadline is Monday. So there are 3 birds, like I said, that I photographed here in Yellowknife. One was a mountain bluebird, and I have to say, for a long time, I actually thought that was just, you know, to get everybody out looking for it. Turns out they do come. And my friend Leslie and I have seen them in the exact same place 2 years in a row out on the highway. So that's kind of cool. And that's where the picture is from out on the highway. The other one is a yellow-headed blackbird, which we don't have. They don't come this far north, so it must have been blown off course, and then it only was here for a little while, calling, and then it was gone, because south of the lake they get the yellow-headed, south of Great Slave Lake. If you go and look at a map, you can see how big Great Slave Lake is. It's a 5-hour drive to get to the south of it, to go around the west part of it to get to the south of it. So that was one of the birds. And the other bird is one of my favorites. I've painted them a number of times, is yellow warblers. I love yellow warblers. They're so feisty. So you can go onto Facebook and see that. If you're in the newsletter, you will get a copy. You will get a link to that when I send out the next newsletter. Yeah, I was supposed to send it out before, but I was really busy this week, so I didn't get to it. I realized that Tuesday is too late. By the time Tuesday comes to do the newsletter, I'm into something else that needs my attention. So I'm looking at my schedule to figure out where I can fit in that into my life. And I think it's going to have to be Saturdays. I work every day of the week anyway, so it's not like it's a huge onerous thing. I don't know many artists who don't work every day of the week. If you're an artist, leave a comment below if you actually get time off during the week, if you take time off during the week. Or do you paint every single day? Even if you paint just a little bit every single day, do you paint every single day? Leave a comment below for me. If you're on Facebook, like the video, follow me. If you're on, and leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. So last week I asked for ideas for colorful birds, and my friend Deb, who lives where these birds probably actually are, was talking about painted buntings, which are like so cool. Sadly, they don't come this far north. Someday I will see them. They are very pretty. Have a variety of colors. Okay. So what do we think? We think that's working? Let's get on to the next little lines here. So I've taken some of the paint off, and I can see these lines are fairly bright. There. Fairly light, I guess, not bright. Oh, I got too much paint there. I'm going to bring my little 00 brush, and I'm going to just move that paint and make it go away so that it's not. Find that shape. Okay. Let's do the next shape. Okay. Slow. Oops. This is why I sit to do this, because when I stand, my hands slip even worse. And the joyful part about working with acrylic is that it's not a huge, it dries fairly quickly, and so you're not putting your hands into wet areas, especially with the small amount of paint that I'm moving around. It's not like I've got copious amounts of paint on my board. Okay, so I think that's going to be too bright. So let's go down a value to a full value 8. And take some of that paint off so I don't have a blob. And I'm going to come here. Concentration. Okay. Straighten that out, get rid of that little bit of paint that went the wrong way, and straighten out the inside. There we go. Actually, I'm seeing that it comes down a little bit more. I'm going to have to bring in a different brush. Let's find a brush that has a little bit more gumption to it, a little bit bigger, and see if we can pull that paint off while it's still wet. It's not very wet. Okay. Let's get a little bit of water on there. There we go. Okay. And there's one more little feather. Birds move so quickly. You just never think about how quickly their feathers move in and out of flying. Ooh, that is way too much paint and way too bright. So I'm going to just come and I'm going to use the bigger brush and take it away. Okay, let that dry. Okay, let's see, maybe this one will work as a, we'll just see. Okay, so let that dry. Let's get this next layer going here. They're not very bright, so they're not very light. So I'm going to find the value of where I'm at. And I'm going to bring it, I'm going to pull a little bit off so I don't have a big blob. And turn it on its side. And try and be as straight as I can. I think of you, Anthony, when I do this. I have an artist friend who does amazing paintings and can do really straight lines really well. I, on the other hand, am working on that notion. So he told us how to do it, but in acrylic it doesn't work quite the same way as it does in oil painting. Okay, we've got about 15 minutes left here. You can see this last little tweaks take time. They just take the time that they take. You can't move it fast. If you try to move it fast, you're going to end up not happy with what you're creating. Okay, I'm going to take that little tiny dabs of paint and move them around. Get my brush going here. And move it around. Creating some highlight in that eye to make it look more realistic. Clean it off, dry it off, and then move it around. I think I'm needing to darken some places in there. This is just tiny, tiny movements with the paint. Like I'm just hardly putting any paint on to get these final details and get things, the shapes that I'm looking for. So the eye in particular. So it's in the eye that I've ended up using value 2 because it just needed a little bit more darkening in it. So I'm just putting a little bit of value 2 in there right now just to create that shape. And I'm going to bring a little bit here. You can see that it's, and then I'm going to take my brush. I don't know if this brush will work as well. And I'll just move that paint around a little bit. Yeah, that's better. I did go out to try and photograph these birds. But alas, they were not where I was when I was there. You have to just be at the right place at the right time to get pictures of pine grosbeaks. Okay. And I'm just moving back and forth in here, thinking about different spaces and how to come forward with them. softening the edge here to get that shape where I want it, but not have too much. And I can see that it's moving away from the light a little bit, so I want to create that form, so I'm just going to come in with a little lighter paint and then take this other brush that's sort of damp and move that darker paint into it and create that form. Okay, slowly but surely it's coming together. I think I've said this already. I probably have a couple more hours worth of work to do on here. And then I will post it when it's completed. And I will be doing the 1-minute video that I did like with the Frosty Raven. And that will be coming out in next Tuesday's newsletter. So watch for that. So if you go to dancingravenstudio.ca, you can sign up for that newsletter. I don't bombard you too much. There's a weekly newsletter, and then there is a larger group newsletter. So if you don't want to be on the weekly, you can just email and say, hey, I prefer to be on the more sporadic one. But the weekly one gives you all kinds of different things. In fact, the weekly one is where I share which bird has won, because there should be some bonus for signing up for the newsletter. Take some of that paint off. Just keep it small. Building, building, building. Looking at it, coming back. I'm squinting my eyes. I'm moving my eyes back and forth to see where I'm at and if I'm happy with what I'm seeing. And I'm just here going to touch that. And then I'm going to use this brush that's dry to move that little tiny bit of paint around. Okay. And I'm seeing that there is lighter paint, a little bit of lightening here, and I'm just going to move that paint around to create that. That was way too light, so I'm going to back up and go down to value 4. Value 4 I'm going to go into. Okay, so value 4 right here, and then I see that value 3 is right next to it, so I'm just going to come in with a little bit of paint, not too much. A happier brush. And put it next to it, and then use this clean dry brush, it's slightly damp I guess, and just move that around. Okay. So today our grandson phoned. He got his parcel for Valentine's Day. It was there, I think, in time, but you know, life is full and busy, so anyway, he liked his little Valentine's. I hope you guys had a good Valentine's Day. Okay, slowly, slowly, slowly. Really looking at what I'm seeing. Where is the shape coming from? Moving that tiny bit of paint around. Giving it more dimension as I do that. Then I'm going to come in here because I can see that can be darker. And I'm going to take a combination of the background, that low chroma yellow, because that's what is the background. And I've put dots of paint there. And now I'm just going to move those tiny dots of paints around to get that value shifting that I'm seeing there. Okay. And there's some value shifting here, just tiny little bits of paint. It's crazy how little paint I end up using to create those subtleties. If you put too much, then you're yeah, it just is a problem at this point. You just want to be nice and slow. Okay, there we go. What do we think? I like that. That's coming. This red is a little too red there. I'm seeing that, and I'm going to darken it up a little bit there with just a touch of paint. Where did I see that red? Where did you go now? Ha! Oh, right there. Just going to touch it with some paint and move that little bit of paint around just to cover that red a little bit, but not to totally block it out, because I want a little bit of it there. It is really interesting to work little bits by little bits here. So let's get some of that. This red here, because I can see there's a hint of red there, but it's such a small amount that I'm just going to put a little bit on and then blend it out so that the dark of the wing pattern still shows up. I'm not trying to cover that. I'm trying to create like a glaze over top of it to give that dimensionality. It's all those subtle shifts that really do help to bring high realism paintings to life. Yeah, there we go. Blend it down. There we go. That's coming. So where are we for time? We've got at least another 5 minutes. So I'm just going to continue to work away. I'm noticing that under here, it's much lighter than it is right now. So let's do a little bit of manipulating of paint there. I'm going to take a value 8. I'm going to draw it along this line. And I see that it comes down here as well. Then taking that brush, move it around. Soften it out. Soften the edges so it's not a hard edge. And then there's another one down here. So we have some lost edges happening in the bird because the background is quite busy and it's darker, and even though they're bright red birds, you think, you know, how do they hide in the forest when they're bright red? But they're the same value as the forest. And bright red, unless it's the sun is right directly on it, isn't that bright. So I find it quite fascinating how you think that they're so bright they would catch everyone's attention, and yet they don't catch as much attention as we think. The females catch less because they're more gray with an interesting green-yellow color that's really pretty. Okay. Oops, wrong brush. Let's take that right out of my hands. Let's get back to where I'm working here. Just working subtly here. I'm looking at all of the different shapes and trying to mimic them so that the paint is moving in the way that the feather is actually shaped. Okay. Then I can see that it's this value here. I'll just do that little value there and move that around. You can get lost in these details. It's quite, if you get your brain into it, you're just like, ah, this is fun. Not everybody thinks that. I can tell you that not everybody thinks that this working at this level of detail is fun. But that's all right. It's fun for me. I'm part of an artist group that meets on Sundays by Zoom every second Sunday. And I think most of us like little brushes. So I've got my people who love little brushes. Okay. Well, we've got a few more minutes here. I'm going to take that, noticing, I'm going to bring that little bit of that value 2 right along this edge here. Ooh, I left too much paint on there. So I'm going to actually remove it because that's a problem. Come back, get some more, take that blob off the top, the end, and then put it in place. What I find really fascinating is how you're working along and you see more and more of the value shifts the closer, the more you work with it, the more paint you put on, the more you see those subtle shifts happen. And that's what makes painting interesting for me. Trying not to concentrate too much here. Some of that dark, that value 2 right along the bottom and right along here, and then blend it out. Just a little bit goes a long way. Okay. Hey, let's see what time it is. You know, we're almost ready to be done here. The microphone is still working. These top feathers here, I can see little streaks with them. So I'm going to bring in lighter or darker? I think a little darker actually. Switch my paint, keep it fresh. Take off the excess. And I was, here. And I'm just going to create little lines. And I may have too big a brush there. I might have to get smaller brushes, but I'll just move it around. That's better. And I can see there's a subtle shift towards the light here. So there's a little bit more light there. So I'm going to take that paint and move it around. I hear my chair creaking and groaning. So here, and move it around. Okay, I think this is a good place to stop. I can come back to this and get it finished later. Ooh, don't do that. That's not a good idea. Well, thank you for joining me today. I'll move the chair out of the way so that I can stand up. We are getting some really fine details, that's what I was doing today. That's what the third pass is. I've done the quick one where we're covering the board. That's the first pass. The second pass takes the longest because it's creating form and doing everything mostly to finish. And now I'm on that third pass, which is tiny little bits of paint that I'm moving around to create the illusion of form on a flat board. Thank you for joining me. If you, it would be nice if you would subscribe on YouTube and subscribe for my newsletter. And, we'll see you next week. We will have a new painting next week, and go and vote on Facebook and on Instagram. I will put that out shortly, and I will have the link below this video in just a few minutes. And if you've left a comment, I'm coming to say hello. Okay, take care. Have a great week.